Are there more drugs being produced and consumed now than ever?
I think so, yeah. Yeah. I mean, the population's so big. It's like 8 billion now, right? But yeah, the technology's there. Like, new drugs are being invented all the time. New molecules are being discovered.
Let's say these drugs. Let's break it down, because drugs is an umbrella term, just like food. Can we really say what we mean? But it's like when you say drugs, people can just say, well, food, because that's essentially the umbrella term for so many different things. But obviously it's more categorized. But like, let's say ketamine, cocaine, psilocybin, MDMA. Are they being produced more and consumed more than ever?
I would say on the whole, yeah.
Yeah. That seems shocking to me.
It's difficult. It's difficult to
because obviously cocaine, 90s, it was like felt like the height of production. I don't know.
And actually, like, cocaine production surged in the last year or two, and there's been basically overproduction in the market. So yeah, there's a bit of a slump right now, and that's being reflected in the Colombian countryside, unfortunately, for these farmers. But yeah, with ketamine, use is exploding. Definitely magic mushrooms. Mm-hmm. Yeah, on the whole, I would say, yeah. But people have been getting high since time immemorial. It was just different things like mandrake or different shrubs and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a fundamental human need or urge. We're drinking cacao right now. Yeah, to change our consciousness, basically. Not because we're so bored in this normal kind of waking state, but there's something, difficult to comprehend that drives people to want to explore altered states of consciousness that are driven by kind of plants or drugs, which is just basically means dry goods in the original Dutch.
Did not know that.
Yeah, when like these sober intoxicants first came over, I think in the sort of 17th century, like chocolate, tea, coffee, they originally got called drugs, I believe. I mean, and now you've got like drug stores, but like what makes like the drugs that they sell in the drugstores perversely not drugs, but then the drugs that are unregulated and sold on the streets are drugs? It's obviously, there's so many contradictions.
And how can it even be gotten away with? How is it so easily? It just feels quite conflicting when you've got like war on drugs, if you've got drugs are bad, like drugs are not good for you. Like people use these terms all the time. But how do they even get away with using that term all the time when it can mean so many different things for different people?
I mean, I interviewed a lady recently, and she'd always been like, oh, like, drugs are bad. And then she did MDMA for the first time, and she realised drugs are good.
Wow.
If you look it's all just very political. The use of language. Narratives are always changing as well, and we've seen that with various things during recent crises. Almost to analyse it is to dignify it when it is just managed chaos.
So why is this your battle? Why have you chosen to show up and speak about this more often than not?
Honestly, I was kind of just propelled into this. I was writing about drug policy at The Guardian and a bit for Vice, some years ago, like 2017, 2018. And then these guys kindly asked me if I wanted to do this book because the chap they originally asked didn't fancy it. And then suddenly I'm like an advocate for this cause, which I never really sought to be. I just saw
opportunity.
No, I more saw like a very valid campaign to legalize medical cannabis. These epileptic children don't respond to a lot of medications. Some respond to zero of the normally prescribed medications, but cannabis literally seems to be as close thing to a panacea as they're ever going to find. And yet the regulations prevent them from accessing it. So, yeah, that campaign was popping off in 2018, and yeah, folks trusted in me, and I did a lot of stories at The Guardian about it all, and it led, to medical cannabis being legalized. The campaign, not my reporting, I should add, and yeah, from that, just found a flow really, because not that many people write about drugs, and obviously from my own experiences, I found drugs to be pretty beneficial and pretty enjoyable, but at the same time, actually they've led to some really challenging experiences that, I would seek to ensure that other people have the tools to avoid.
Do you think that's what could happen? Because I think the fear's there, right? The fear of stepping into, releasing the world, children to more available, what would feel like more available drugs. Like there's fear there, right? There's this scarcity there of like what would happen.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think, yeah, I mean, to have cocaine available at a pharmacy on a high street for many people would seem pretty shocking, but that's basically the reality we're in right now. And it's like young black kids or foreigners who don't have like proper their papers who are getting put out to sell these drugs to white people, frankly. And as a result, the drugs are sometimes contaminated. People don't know the strength. It's like, the potency can vary wildly. And all of this is a result of policy, I think. And when one realizes that actually the drug policies are making the drugs more dangerous than they would otherwise be, we see this with like heroin getting cut with fentanyl, other drugs getting, cut down to make them heavier with like different things like cement. Really, like, if you're taking medical grade diamorphine heroin with safe equipment, you should be pretty much okay, so long as you're not overdosing.
Mm-hmm.
But, people's veins are getting clogged up, and that's because of the contaminants. Yeah, and needle sharing. So really, we have to consider the effect of, folks wandering around the streets looking for the next high, asking people for money, stealing, and the effect on society of, a whole underclass of people who are the purveyors of these drugs. And we have to look at, the consequences of not doing anything.
So if drugs were legalized and you had more regulatory systems that stop drugs getting cut with just things that are not necessarily clean, let's just use the word clean, what's to stop companies that already do that with food? When they put in stabilizers, they put in shit that's not good for us or really real. It's all synthetics. So we already have that in a system that actually is detrimental to us, but it just is very normal now. It's hard to find food unprocessed with stuff that isn't beneficial for us. So what's to stop that happening in drugs if they were all legalized?
Yeah, one has to kind of trust in the state to responsibly regulate, and that's a difficult thing for many people, including myself. And the state in recent decades is more stepping back rather than being like interventionist in the economy, let's say, on the whole. So that kind of explains some of the hesitance. And what is to say that these companies wouldn't act in the best interests of consumers, because they so often don't. But in our current system, there's little we can do really than encourage, folks to take a different approach along those lines.
It's actually getting worse, isn't it? It's actually getting worse. I feel, as you said, they're being produced more than ever and consumed more than ever. So it's actually going the opposite way.
It's so much money as well. It really is so much money. And as it stands, like how much of the alcohol profits are, used to fund recovery that actually works. I'm not sure. I don't have those figures, but
well, look at prison systems. There's none of the money's going into reforming prisoners. Look, I've been there. It doesn't teach you how to not go back inside. It doesn't do anything because it costs more money. But that's not where the money's being channeled. So it's like, even if people had to, it has to come from the people. Really, it has to. I feel like it has to come from petitions, it has to come from court cases, whatever it might be. Let's to go on that journey, like MAPS have done in America, have gone like by the book, how they prove things are beneficial for you in certain environments. I mean, I don't know what the route would even be, or you could enlighten us on some countries that have decriminalised and legalised certain drugs. Maybe we can go there next. But like, what's the route to that? Because, yeah, it's just very, very, very murky. And what would even be the route to decriminalising drugs and legalising drugs?
I mean, some countries have decriminalised drugs. But yeah, you obviously you're gonna struggle to find people that are like campaigning for legal cocaine, especially in like a recreational sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you have got Transform, the drug NGO that put out a How to Regulate Stimulants book a couple of years ago. They're really, really respected folks, and they put together a very coherent case. You've had leaders in Latin America at various points indicating or outright calling for change. So yeah, it's going to have geopolitical implications if, for example, Colombia legalized the export of coca paste, for example. That's massive. Like, that's billions, maybe trillions of dollars a year, and it would lead the US to have far less power in the region as well, which they exercise through the DEA. There's so much to consider here, but at the root of it is what I think should be an acceptance that people have the right to, if they're not harming anyone, to affect their consciousness however they want. And half of these drugs are used in hospitals anyway. Cocaine's used, morphine's used. Why can't responsible adults have the right to do so in their own homes or in certain public spaces?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. What's going to happen when we see more cashless society? And I don't know if your thoughts on that, but like, what's going to happen to drugs and underground systems that rely on cash? Will they just be finding another way to transport money? And
yeah, I mean, already these lads that are selling balloons at the end of the parties are just stood in street corners with like contactless things. Yeah, you know, I paid for a cab with contactless earlier. I think all these things are always shifting and they're in flux. And yeah, it's a shame for people that are homeless, because obviously they're less likely to have the means to be able to just get someone to tap, or maybe people are like kind of scared to like tap their card to give them a couple of quid. So that's obviously concerning. And I quite like the people that are refusing to allow shops to refuse legal tender cash. And yeah, I think some stores are kind of going the other way now, and you know, removing the self-service checkouts and all of that, because we realize that it's important to have like a human connection, and people are maybe more likely to steal as well in certain situations if they're just using contactless payments on like a self-service checkout, because it's just zero human connection.
This is true.
But with regards to drugs, yeah, I think it's all going online. You know, people are buying stuff from the dark web, and now on the Telegram channels, the people that never cracked the dark web can now just go on Telegram and easily get stuff delivered at like far cheaper prices than the street prices. And I think that's actually reducing. It has the possibility, if we went like to a total system of selling online, to reducing the kind of turf wars between the gangs, but maybe that's another conversation.
The biggest thing on my mind is like, yes, we could generate lots of money. Is that the biggest argument really in like the arena of like lots of countries having these debates? Portugal, like, where does the money go, and can it generate more money to be used in, you know, better ways? But I always think there's caution around like, there's money being, there's no really vote on where the money goes. So like, what motivation have people got to try and legalize drugs so we can tax it, so we can create industry, so we can have more money? But then where does that money even go?
For me, it's about public health, and I think that's the most convincing argument, frankly. Maybe we can improve public health by reinvesting some of those tax profits under any legal regulated system. But as I was saying earlier, the drug policies cause more harm than the drugs themselves. If there was free heroin for people that are addicted in the US, the fentanyl problem would disappear overnight. If you had safe places where they're testing the drugs, making sure it's pure heroin, the fentanyl problem would literally disappear overnight.
Yeah, hasn't this happened in Portugal? Well, they set up centres where people can just go and use heroin in a safe environment.
Yeah, I actually visited a drug consumption room or an overdose prevention centre in Copenhagen a few years back. Really interesting space. Pretty gritty. And yeah, only like really sort of hard to reach hardcore drug users are there, injecting heroin, smoking crack. But you have health services there to engage them, help them if they need housing support, this, that and the other. And you're just not going to engage those folks if you don't provide a space like that. And I think there's only been a couple of fatal overdoses globally, 100 or so centres since the first one was maybe established, I believe, in Switzerland 30 odd years ago, because they're actually quite easy to avoid or reverse an overdose in a supervised environment if someone's throwing up on themselves, or even if they have overdosed and then you give them the kind of overdose antidote, naloxone. It's not so complicated to, as I say, reverse. But if folks are in like back alleyways, then yeah, they're just out on their own. And yeah, we maybe underestimate the effect, like on the streets of Glasgow, of, folks seeing that like really brutal poverty and yeah, drug use on a daily basis, what that happens to our collective happiness when we know that other possibilities are so easy to create.
Yeah, kind of has to move into a space of like disassociating from it to cope, or to like the guy that comes on the train, on the tube in London, which happens more so now when I visit, or maybe I'm just more aware of it, who knows. But then when I lived there for 4 years, post-COVID, post those times, like now it just seems like maybe it's another strategy or another method that homeless people are coming onto the train and actually speaking directly to their experience in front of people. Like that seems to be happening more and more. And a lot of people, like, they face that every single day. So they have to disassociate and numb and just, put on their noise cancelling headphones and not pay attention. I don't even know if any music's playing, but like it's a strategy to just disassociate and not have a kind of a response to it. It's challenging. What's the biggest like thing you come up against when you speak about this to people, like or online? Like what's the biggest rejection of it? Like where do you think that comes from?
I mean, as I said earlier, I'm not really actively advocating for this stuff, to be honest with you. Is very coincidental. Yeah, but I'm not like getting on the soapbox about it. Do you know what I mean?
No, I'm just trying to.
And actually, I sort of fudge at the end. In the conclusion, I do sort of fudge my recommendations. But yeah, the striking thing is there aren't that many impassioned defenders of the status quo. You've got sort of Peter Hitchens. I know a few friends in the drug policy reform community spar with him occasionally, but yeah, the striking thing is there's not that many people that are really like, let's do the status quo on like any deep intellectual level.
But people are not that engaged with this conversation either.
I wouldn't say so. I mean, for many people it's peripheral, but politicians remain very cautious about drugs and morality, and without one of the major parties really in a sustained way getting behind it, obviously the newspapers are maybe a bit hesitant to follow suit or to forge their own path. And yeah, there's not really like a great like momentum, I wouldn't say, in this country, but in America there really is. And it's really striking to see what's going on out there with legalization of cannabis, the impending, it seems, regulation of medical MDMA, and probably psilocybin to follow suit. And we know that where America acts, we do tend to follow for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
And actually our MHRA, like health regulator, has passed some policies recently to bring us closer to the FDA. So yeah, it looks like, times will be changing soon enough.
Mm-hmm. So you're more focused on what goes on in America than here, than like trying to get involved in conversations here?
I just think the whole movement's a lot more dynamic in the States, and you've got so many different actors. Like you've got the psychedelic church movement. Obviously, there's history of indigenous use there as well, and you've got indigenous leaders. You've got MAPS and everyone that are going, really hard on this. America just has better outlaws, as I was told recently, than we do. Like our culture is just different. We're more shy, a bit more introverted. Island race.
Also, the politics is very different. Like I remember listening to maybe Tim Ferriss talk about it. It's like in this country, it's just harder to get things, to change things. You just seem so more rooted in our traditions over here from a politics standpoint.
And that's reflected in a more centralized political system. In the States, a lot of the cannabis changes have come through states, and some of these states have got direct democracy. So if you get 10,000 signatures, for example, then you can put something on a ballot for a referendum. And that's how a lot of the cannabis changes came from the get-go. So people can have their voices heard, at least at a local level, to a far greater extent than here.
It's a light and dark over there, though, isn't it? It's like there's great things happening, but it also seems like extremes on both ends. They're just very extreme.
When you have this anarchy, then things are more free to erupt on any which way of the spectrum. And there's definitely a beauty in that, but it's intense. But things stay the same more in the UK, I think. But little by little, the psychedelic culture is definitely coming up, and more sort of reasonable people are changing their views on drug policy. There's far less stigmatizing language in the media and the public spaces about drug addicts these days. And I think things are changing little by little. And as we were saying earlier, I don't know the exact statistics, but, everyone's taking drugs. Like people are taking cocaine all the time in the pubs. Everyone on the dance floors is taking ketamine. Psilocybin ceremonies happening left, right and centre, and people have long taken MDMA in raves. So I like the way that culture changes from the ground up, and actually then the political machines have to change to reflect that, at least eventually, to be able to uphold their power, because it becomes untenable if there's laws that people are routinely breaking. It'll just break down trust more widely if people are seen to be doing that all the time. You know what I mean?
What do you think the shortfalls are of putting these all in the same bucket? Is that beneficial rather than like taking things like psilocybin and like rooting for that to be approached differently, like a lot of people are, a lot of countries are, but then like putting them all in the same bracket of like cocaine, MDMA, psilocybin? I just don't feel, that doesn't feel good, that's all in the same kind of sentence of like drugs. Do you know what I'm saying?
Like on the front page of this book.
Yeah.
I mean, the idea is...
Because they're all so different. They do all so many different things to
that
the body. Like how cocaine is... We see cocaine, we don't see it as coca leaves, we see it as polluted fucking petrol, kerosene, and extracted and really a highly chemicalized process to refine the cocaine and then to snort it up your nose. Anything going up my nose is never that good. I'm on the fence about Hape, but it's different. They're all very different.
Yeah, the idea would be that not all of these drugs would be sold at the same place at the same time. Basically, they would be subject to different levels of safeguards, probably through some sort of like pharmacy model for some of the drugs, a retail model with strict controls over advertising for others, and there would be sort of harm reduction consultations, like there is in a very informal sense in Amsterdam. Like I remember me and my brother went into the smart shop once and we wanted to buy some salvia, and the lady asks us like what we've been up to, and we're like, oh, we had a truffle tea last night and had a couple of beers the night before and maybe a spliff at some point, and she was like, okay, you definitely don't want to smoke salvia today. Then I was like, okay. And then she's like, what do you really want? And we're like, well, LSD. And she's like, oh, but we have LSA. And sold us these like Hawaiian baby seeds, and it was great. It was amazing. And similar thing could happen at these pharmacies of the future in the UK. Like, but
you're gonna have to enlighten us on what these baby seeds are. So
it's like ergot. It's like the original, like the precursor drug of LSD. So it's kind of like an earthy LSD type feeling.
So in a cafe, you're just taking this in a cafe?
Pretty much. I mean, we took them and we were roaming, and then once it kicked in, we found a cafe to sit in, like a really nice little basement.
Yeah?
Yeah, it was great.
What was great about it?
The connection between two brothers. Mm-hmm. Just the dropping down of our egos, that sort of in-between space being filled with more love and direct connection.
Yeah. I do feel, even at the start of the conversation, I was like, these are bridges to connecting with people, even if it's like connecting over a coffee or like doing something, which is a drug, like doing something together with someone. Like the substance itself is a part of it, but where you do it and who you do it with is very significant and can really impact like the experience.
This is why like I occasionally have a drink, because it is our mutual, generally speaking, elixir, and it does facilitate a connection. And if folks are together and everyone's sort of on the same vibe, it can be beautiful.
It's just toxic.
But, yeah, it's a depressant. It's literally a depressant. I don't want to take depressants, man. And I should add, I'm not like, if you did put me on the spot, and I don't think we should sell like crack or crystal meth in these stores. But I think that the availability of these other things will significantly diminish the demand for these more harmful substances.
Do you talk about decriminalisation in the book?
Yeah.
Should we talk about that? And because I think people will get on board with that way more than legalising them straight away.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that like a precursor, do you think? Can you see that happening?
Yeah, I mean, how can you lock someone up for smoking a joint? That's so ridiculous, isn't it? Like, let's just strip it back. That's crazy.
Well, picking mushrooms and eating them.
Yeah, I heard a friend in Bristol last season. They just got back to their car, and the police pulled up, and they come out and they're like, "Yeah, there's a big problem with like picking mushrooms here." And my friend who's like just got like a massive jar of mushrooms, like, problem? And he had to surrender his mushrooms.
What kind of mushrooms were they?
Magic mushrooms, like Liberty Caps. Even today, like...
Oh, that doesn't surprise me.
Cops are hanging around like magic mushroom spots in the West Country and confiscating them. I mean, how can that be possible? When these
people
things
have a story,
these
right?
Things are growing naturally. No one's like propagating the spores, really, I don't think. They're just there naturally, and folks are picking them as one has the right to pick other fungi, and then the police come and confiscate them. Yeah, so I mean, it's changing. Like the proportion, or even the numbers of people that are getting locked up for drug use, simple drug use, are obviously going down. And as I was saying, various examples of people around the world like being able to consume drugs now without being automatically criminalized or being at risk of it. But it doesn't solve the problem of the market, right? You're still leaving it in the hands of criminals.
I think there's so much fear there. Like I talk to older generations, and there really is an embedded story in their minds, and it likely comes from countercultures and what happened in America, and like the story that's fed into our psyches, which is that drugs. And it sounds crazy to our generation. There's not many people in our generation that feel that way, but there still is that. I don't know. I'd like to see some data on how many people actually think like taking psilocybin mushrooms is ludicrous and it will make you crazy. Like that's a reality for a lot of people.
And, it is indeed a reality.
Yeah.
To some extent, even if it's temporary, like these passing bouts of paranoia that come up for folks. A friend of mine was telling me about, his girlfriend, I think the New Year's Eve before last, they took mushrooms and he had to end up call the ambulance because she was going crazy.
Let's talk about some personal experience then, because we've both taken magic mushrooms. You're not going to say where, but we have done. And until you start to open up about the stories and the benefits and that, and the connection you can feel in that environment with taking a substance like that, people will continue to feel the way they do about it and be very closed-minded. Because I think it comes down to the situation we're in is like benefits, negatives, like what outweighs what for people who just, who we're speaking to here, which might be alarmed at the title of the podcast, and they're like, drugs? Why would you legalize drugs? And what can magic mushrooms do for you? That's just immature. Like, why would you take magic mushrooms? Or to see colors and just magical things that happen and aren't real, So what are some experiences that you've had with magic mushrooms? I can go first if you want.
Yeah, I mean, I've had some wildly varying experiences. Broadly immensely positive. One experience immediately comes to mind. I was at a festival in 2020 at Medicine, the first year, and I'd eaten some McKenna mushrooms. They're like fangs, really fluffy. And I'd probably had a bit too much to be sort of out and about on the dance floor. But luckily, because of the pandemic, there was like very few people on the dance floor because you had to wear a mask, and the security guards were like checking everyone was wearing their mask, so it wasn't really a vibe.
At Medicine Festival?
Yeah, in 2020, the first year, they were like checking people. Like if you took your mask off, eventually a security guard would come over and like tell you to put it back on because it was under a cover, it was under a sort of canopy.
Wow.
And at one moment, I just started feeling like wheezy, and I had to go sit down. So we went over to the Shala, and I was keeled over. I couldn't breathe, and then into my head just came this realization that I needed to go home. Not in that moment.
This is we're for mushrooms here. Not against. The story started in a way that's probably going to put people off.
I mean, it is what it is. I probably took too much in a highly stimulating environment.
Sure.
But whatever happened, that precipitated this moment where I had to make this oath to go home, and once I did, I could breathe, and this tension in my chest and everything released. And it was an incredibly blissful feeling. I remember I was wearing shoes and socks as well. And I looked down and I just realised how preposterous it was that I wasn't walking barefoot like the druids who had come before me. So I took them off. And I was just having all these fascinating downloads about the nature of consciousness and the evolution of thought. Partly because earlier that day I was speaking to someone and they expressed slightly tongue-in-cheek surprise that anyone would want to read books because it just takes away from one's connection with nature and community. But anyway, as a result, I went home a week or two later and spent sort of 6 or 7 months on and off and connected a lot more with my family as a result. And I don't think I would have done that had I not had that experience with the mushrooms.
Yeah, you touched upon a powerful point, which I always get, which anything that doesn't feel like in connection or in harmony or in communion with what is more natural, it allows me to see through it. I remember I was coming out of an experience I was in Australia,
Wow.
And I was walking up this high street and I was just seeing, like, I was kind of window shopping in a way, but I was just witnessing everything through a very different lens of what is just the kind of manufacturing of so many different things. And it just allowed me to reflect on seeing through what isn't more natural. Does that make sense? So everything that wasn't, or that was like highly produced or just taking us away from, you know, the feet on the earth, like being really like outside, straight lines, like real things that have like been very structured in a certain way, manipulated, let's say. It just allowed me to break through that and just see more clearly that what was going to benefit me, let's say.
Yeah, I mean, that's the annoying thing with psychedelics, isn't it? Once you've turned on, you just see these systems of oppression and destruction everywhere. But that's an invitation to connect with what's real and what's true and where nature is thriving, and help figure out how we can do that in other places as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I mean, you can prove this through studies and tests that they've done, how it impacts on your brain. And it shuts down your default mode network, which allows you to see past the lens of experience that you normally operate in. So you see more of your subconscious, and that's why it's being so beneficial in like therapeutic environments.
Yeah, there's some really interesting research coming through. This is embargoed, so I won't say exactly what the study is, but in January, a study will come out, and it's basically showing evidence from fMRI scans that this particular psychedelic can basically increase white blood matter, I think, which effectively de-ages the brain and therefore promotes really like rapid neural connectivity. As the evidence base grows, we're going to more and more realize the incredible potential of these medicines. Like, I think this is really only just the beginning with the research. A lot of it's actually quite underpowered and very small groups and in really imperfect settings. So once the money comes back in over the next couple of years, as the economy probably picks up, I think the case is just going to become even more overwhelming.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's what happens. That's what happened with cannabis. It kind of is overwhelming how much more, but you can't argue with it. And it's ignorant and naive to think any different. And that's why, it's changed a lot.
But I mean, it all depends on setting and the context. And like we're saying, there's a lot of charlatans coming through, like psychedelic facilitators that either don't know what they're doing or maybe have some bad intentions occasionally. So we need to be wary of that. And in much the same way with cannabis, like you say, actually, I don't think the data is so strong for certain uses of cannabis, especially like, high use of high strength cannabis amongst young people. Who knows? Like, I think there's some really serious issues connected to that, and we may see them further along the line. That's the problem with all this research, is that a lot of it isn't long term. I mean, folks say that, the issues are urgent, just like with other pharmaceutical medicines. And, I agree with that to some extent. But when we're talking about like regular high dose use, whether it's cannabis, psychedelic or pharmaceutical, I think we need to be really wary of that. I mean, less is more.
Yeah, which makes me feel that's the argument for legalizing. So you can educate and actually explain things to people as they are, consuming, or before they take them,
And if you just say no to drugs, it's just going to encourage young people who are geared to rebel to want to do them more and more and more. I don't think banning anything, just like with these vapes, is ever the best option. Not that I think that these vapes are the best thing for folks either. But
we banned smoking, right, indoors, let's say, and we banned marketing campaigns, and has that helped?
Seemingly, yeah. Seemingly, it had a good public health effect.
Absolutely. So there is case for making laws against certain things that we know are unequivocally bad for us.
Yeah, absolutely. I think with smoking is a particular case though, because smoking indoors and the secondhand smoke is bad for people's health.
Well,
So
like
I
you
think
said
it's a
before,
unique case.
you said before about as long as it's not harming anyone.
Yeah.
Like if the byproduct of taking mushrooms, you are, you know, debilitating other people that were around you for a week, and it's like, of course. But this is beautiful. It's the dance of figuring all this stuff out.
Yeah, I don't know how. Yeah, it's pretty mind-boggling to to consider state-backed pro-magic mushroom campaigns to increase education and make sure people aren't taking them in the rave. But Oregon is doing legal psilocybin therapies now, and Colorado are moving in a similar direction now. That's pretty crazy to consider. Even if there's some emerging issues there, that is mad that you can just go up to a clinic in Oregon and sign up for your magic mushroom therapy, and that there's a whole state system funded by the profits to regulate it and try and mitigate any harms. I think that's a great leap for mankind. And yeah, as the evidence of it increases, that it's positive, as I'm sure it will, although I'm definitely sure that the pace in which there's been changes, there'll be stories emerging of like poor facilitation that obviously need to be addressed, but my hunch would be that on the whole it's going to be beneficial. And yeah, I think humans are ultimately fairly reasonable people, and when we start seeing the data that something's useful and indeed profitable for the economy, then yeah, we tend to move in that direction, I think, at least eventually.
To what extent do you think the byproduct of taking drugs, misusing drugs, like abusing drugs, is just a byproduct of, like, it's a symptom of other things? Like, it always feels to me that's the case. Like, it's not about the thing, it's about what the thing is. You know, Gabor Mate speaks about this a lot. It's like the opposite of addiction isn't sobriety, it's connection. So to what extent should our focus be not really about the drugs? It should be about why people are misusing them, why people are, you know, is it the drugs themselves? Is that the reason people are misusing them? Or is it mainly because people, their needs aren't getting met, or they're from, like, you know.
Yeah, I mean, this is a very back of a fag packet analysis, but I would just compare off the top of my head, like, the experience of raving in Europe, like in Holland, to some experiences I've had here. And it feels like the UK is a bit more of a pressure cooker. Like, people have got a lot more to release, like more like bound up, like tension. And yeah, the rave is our kind of ceremony or ritual.
For sure.
In which people can connect and, yeah, ascend to these altered states, even if they often come crashing down, partly due to everyone drinking and taking a million other things and not being able to have that strong foundation in the moment. But the experience in Holland, you know, I've only been a couple of times, just feels a lot more relaxed. I feel like maybe there's just more, it's more of a liberal society for starters, and yeah, I think that definitely all things are reflections of the state of society and our own internal health.
Absolutely.
Also, they check the drugs though in Holland, you know, it's far more available. Well, it's not available here, really. Testing your drugs to know what's in them, like impurities, and making sure it's not full of speed. So, yeah, if all the drugs we're taking are cut with speed, then yeah, no wonder.
Do you know people that test their drugs? Like when they,
There are ways to do it in the UK. Like I think there's a system in Wales, and you can obviously order like drug testing kits. But, you know, I don't think too many people do it. Whereas in Holland, there's, you know, different centres, loads of them in Amsterdam, where you can just go and get your substances tested.
Really? See, that's worth leaning into, I feel.
Yeah, I mean, it's happening here. It's going to happen with Fiona Measham and The Loop, who've been doing it at festivals. They've had to, like, reel it in a bit.
Yeah. What? So, yeah, kind of behind the scenes.
Well, I mean, they were doing it at Boomtown Secret Garden Party. Like, you could literally just go up to their booth with a tiny bit of your substance, and they test it and then give you a personalized little consultation, like I was saying earlier, that type of thing.
Wow, I did not know that.
And then since 2018, they've had to sort of go back of house. So they're only sort of testing stuff that's confiscated by the police, partly because of political reasons. But it seems that they're on the verge of getting...
Well, legal reasons, right?
Yeah, but it seems like they're getting a license soon, which will allow them to do this stuff at scale.
Wow.
In a sort of front of house way. But obviously there's a lot of consternation in Westminster around allowing that, I presume, because once you do that, it kind of rolls back some certain like fundamental aspects of the drug laws. But yeah, that's been happening, and yeah, it seems like it's going to take off again at some point really soon, because it needs to. Even at festivals, like, 35 people have died at festivals in the last 6 years, mostly young people, and mostly because they've taken adulterated or unexpectedly high strength drugs. That's crazy, and it's so avoidable if folks just have the information about how strong what they're taking is. Don't be daft, just do half. All you need is a little tap on the shoulder and someone to tell you that, innit? Rather than doing 2 pills for the first ever time. Yeah, I think, just basic education. But it's amazing what the Loop have been doing, so long may it continue.
The Loop. We've all been in the Loop.
Yeah, don't get stuck in the loop by doing too much. Or by taking loads of drugs that are fucking cut with speed. That'll get you in a loop as well.
Yeah.
Get you in the right twist.
Yeah, powerful. What else? You mentioned 5-MeO. I'd love to hear about your experience around 5-MeO.
5-MeO DMT. What we were talking about it before you rolled the tape. What were we saying?
That you are Vice's go-to guy.
Well, I had a story published this week about the collection trade in the Mexican desert, and that folks had been on a few occasions sort of caught in the crossfire of cartel shit in the desert, and now that there's people collecting it in return for methamphetamine, so they're kind of selling it at cheaper prices. Like, people that are addicted are going into the desert or the town Hermosillo and milking the glands of these toads and then trading it with the cartel for meth, which obviously suggests that the cartel are then selling it on. So there's concerns around that. And previously I went to Tulum in Mexico and did a story about the toad tourism market there. There's a hotel, the Bufo Averia Sanctuary, that was set up by a Venezuelan actor, where you can literally just walk in off the street and smoke toad. It's called speed toading. So you're not doing it in like a retreat or anything. You're just going, smoking toad, experiencing unity consciousness. And then an hour later, you're back in like the center of Tulum, which seems pretty unwise to me.
So set the scene then. If someone walks off the street, goes into this Bufo, so what goes on there? Like, what's the setting like, and what's the administration like?
They've got some teepees set up out back, and they've got a couple of chaps that are just at hand to, put on these impromptu ceremonies.
Just saying happy birthday to you when you come back around.
Well, I actually heard about an Ibogaine clinic, which is a whole nother psychedelic, that started offering 5-MeO or Bufo, but they didn't really know what they were doing. And when people were coming out of the trip, they were singing like happy birthday to them, which is really strange, like to wake up after like that most intense possible experience, and you just got a bunch of like strangers projecting their own shit, like singing happy birthday to you. Like, the trick is, I think, after sitting with a couple of people with this medicine, is just to allow the person to experience the medicine and to give them the keys, the information to really let go. There's this mantra, I surrender, I am surrendering, I have surrendered. And that really, really helped me. And my last experience was really life-changing. And it kind of stuck with me. Having that space that I can enter, even now, it's incredible. I can just close my eyes and sort of remember how I felt in that moment. Just a pure letting go. And it's still accessible to me. And crazy, right?
Mm.
But yeah, you've got to do it in the right way, because it's just so intense.
Was it like a facing death? Was it surrendering to your own death?
Pretty much, yeah. Because the ego has to totally dissolve. You don't necessarily go to the other side. It's more just like a dissolution of everything. So the ego fights back, and that's the kind of terrifying thing. It's like, oh my God, why have I done this? What am I doing? Like, you're letting go of control. So, yeah, I think the key to facilitating experiences for folks is to be able to give them that guidance about what to do to allow yourself to just surrender to the medicine. And yeah, I think that's where people get it wrong, because if you don't, then you're kind of stuck in this like weird sort of in-between purgatory place, and that's left tons of people really untethered. I think, yeah, of all the medicines, I've heard the most like negative stories about people smoking Bufo or 5-MeO, because yeah, if you don't do it right, you can get really stuck. And yeah, on the face of it, it seems very simple. You just smoke it, and then suddenly you're in this kind of other world. There's not the whole like rigmarole of brewing the ayahuasca and, waiting 3 hours for it to kick in. It's just boom. So yeah, folks develop a kind of God complex, like the receivers and the facilitators. They can, if they abuse it.
Did you have the context for it going in? Like, did you somewhat know that all what you just said was the makeup of it?
Well, I did it once in 2019 with some friends of yours, actually. And yeah, we were just in this dude's like back garden in Barnet.
I love that you say some friends of yours, mentioning no names.
And yeah, he was a really nice chap, and he had his like girlfriend co-facilitating, but I really don't think he knew what he was doing. He was pretty reckless. I think he smoked it a lot. You can see it in their eyes. These people that smoke a lot of toad. It's really like, they're really kind of wide-eyed. And there's like a sense that they haven't like really, like they're still like really activated. So yeah, he facilitates a ceremony. The first person was like throwing up a bunch, and he really like, sorted her out. Just gave her the space and made sure that she didn't like choke, and yeah, she had an amazing experience. And I went next, and I had no information about what was coming really. So when this like bad trip, I could literally see the letters like written across my forehead. And then yeah, I let go. By the grace of God, I let go, and it was really great. And I was breathing succulent, sweet breaths like never before, doing cat cows, a bit of yoga, and then I lied down, and then suddenly this dude was giving me a full body massage, and it kind of felt good. But in the same way, it kind of took away from totally surrendering to the experience that I was having, and this cosmic orgasm that was enveloping my mind, body, and spirit. And then the person who went after, really, I don't think had such a positive experience. Like, she didn't really let go. Or yeah, I don't really know what happened.
Well, that is it, isn't it? That is what constitutes to a negative experience.
Yeah.
It seems to be.
So having that reference point, then when one, sits with folks, whatever the medicine is, and it seems like it's been doing in the right way, and you're able to have a sort of full experience, and it's just really blissful, and yeah, you're allowed just that space to experience. Yeah, super grateful. Yeah.
How is it manifested in your day-to-day, like those experiences? Maybe the particular one in Mexico. Like, how did that then go forward and manifest and impact your day-to-day?
I mean, it's all about integrating the lessons too, right? You can do however many psychedelic experiences, and I haven't done that many, to be honest, because I feel like, once you get the message, hang up the phone. And it takes time to like change one's behavior, one's habits, patterns, all of that. But I would say on the whole, like, my mind is just so less busy. Yeah, I think I've let a lot go, thankfully, during these experiences. really connected with a sense of gratitude to my mum and dad just for the gift of life. And through that, I think one can forgive a lot as well. Because at the end of the day, like, I'm just grateful to be here today, you know, for this cacao, to somehow have had this really slim book published. Like, it's crazy. And yeah, nothing else really matters apart from, yeah, being thankful to the people that have come before you to be able to have this life now. And yeah, maybe I would have had that realization had it not been for psychedelics, but it was psychedelics that spawned that for me. And yeah, slowing down and yeah, tapping in to what really nourishes me and yeah, it makes me feel good. But it's an ongoing process. It's totally ongoing process. You know, this morning I literally checked my phone like the first thing when I woke up. You know, what an idiot.
I live in a van. The phone doesn't have another room to be put in. It happens quite often for me.
I mean, yeah, I don't have.
Is there judgment there?
I wouldn't leave my phone in the living room either, because you know, it's a shared house.
Well,
I'm not judging that. I'm not necessarily judging myself, but yeah, I wanted this morning to just crack on and like get up and I'm doing like a Kundalini practice in the morning for like 20-30 minutes, and then doing like a 30-minute meditation unless I have more time. So yeah, I think just getting up, getting sort of grogginess out, get moving. I think that's just going to be better for me and everyone around me. Pretty much, yeah. I mean, but it's not that deep, you know. I wasn't even like doom scrolling. You know, I just knew that I had like this really interesting message to check, and I was just like a little child, and I wanted to check it, and it was like really nourishing to read, actually. So
yeah, man. Sometimes I just let it happen. Sometimes I observe the whole thing. There's not a lot in my life that I don't observe. Like I witness, okay, why am I doing this? Like I'm quite like scrutinizing everything, but in a way that sometimes I can just allow it and see if there's judgment there, or see if there's like, can I just be okay doing this, even though I know it's not, you know, beneficial for me. And then in that that's spiritual for me, just not having so much of a fucking headache every time I'm human, you know?
Yeah, when one can just observe these things without getting too neurotic or like putting too much pressure upon oneself, I think is definitely better. But yeah, I think we can still like guide ourselves in the right direction as well, because I did also check my emails like while I was on my phone this morning. It's just like totally unnecessary. Just crack on, and then I'll have a deeper meditation if I haven't checked my emails, and then probably, you know, more clarity is going to come, and just, you know, better things.
Great way to leave it. I think the gratitude, I think that's sometimes the simplicity of that it can be profound, right? Yeah,
I'm like so grateful, ironically, that I was able to share that with my dad before he passed away. Like, yeah, I'm not sure like to what extent he realized the depth of like how important that was for me. But yeah, I don't know at what point through my very like imperfect and up and down yoga and meditation practice I would have come to that conclusion or otherwise in my life and been able to tell my dad, because now it's, you know, sort of too late at least to have told him in the physical realm.
Yeah.
You know, folks say it's 10 years of therapy in one night. Some of these psychedelics, Ibogaine, maybe it is. And yeah, the keepers of the medicine, the Bwiti tribe, have a real connection to their ancestral line. So it seems like no coincidence that was my prevailing takeaway from the experience.
Yeah, beautiful, man. I think I always look at where we're at now and why now is it so profound. Like, would it have always been like, you know, if taking these substances thousands of years ago, would it have had as much impact? I bet not. I bet now is like the time where we're seeking these things out more and more, because it's really necessary to go there with ourselves. and that's what's felt most true for me is in this time, like these substances, these medicines can be really useful to really go into that experience.
Yeah, because I think we've lost our connection.
Yeah,
to
it's
some
like
extent,
the world's speaking to us, right? As well,
with what's important, connection to family, connection to our food, the natural world, and yeah, these medicines wake us up and can bring us back to a more simple appreciation of the simple things in life. And yeah, if you live in your village and you got your parents, your grandparents, your great grandparents with you all the time, maybe you're more likely just to have an appreciation for them.
Yeah, and it's way more than words, right? You'd have lived that. You'd have lived that appreciation.
Exactly.
And now we get it. Someone will listen to this and be like, yeah, I'm appreciative, I get it. And we'll say the things, but are we actually like really showing gratitude with the food that has like, in front of us? Like how are we actually like living?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of this is a remembering. And yeah, psychedelics can facilitate those epiphanies, realizations that just allow us to connect with our essence, what's important, family, health, the world around us. These other things have just invented themselves over time: money, status, wealth, right? And when you strip all these things away in the psychedelic experience, yeah, I know some people are claiming that they did acid and then realized that they should live forever, and now they're investing their billions into longevity treatments and like stem cell injections and all of that. But yeah, that's certainly not my experience of taking psychedelics. Like wanting to live forever, it's about wanting to be more in service, share useful information, and help folks. Although if it does transpire that all 8 billion people in the world are going to have access to these longevity treatments, then great, I'll eat my words.
I think it's any opportunity to speak to these things. I think there's an exception. It's generally not the rule. Of course, there are exceptions. But like with the conversation I was having last night with Warren talking about water, we've thrown, like we always do this, we throw the baby out with the bathwater. Like there may be some people that die from drinking water from a stream, but it doesn't mean that stream is going to kill everyone. And it comes down to like safety. It's like how insulated we're trying to keep ourselves because we're so afraid of death. Like that's what this comes down to. And by doing that, by putting red tape everywhere, criminalizing, like just making things illegal, it's like we're trying to isolate ourselves from essentially dying. And we're so afraid of that. And when we all do that, it really like impairs our ability to live,
Yeah, simple. A friend of mine was saying that she got sick from drinking the water at this spring in Totnes, where I live in Devon. And I'd filled up there on Thursday. And yeah, I was fine. Seemingly she wasn't. Perhaps, because of the rainfall in the day or two before, and there'd been some runoff.
But what happened now is that gets reported, that spring gets shut down, and so many people don't have access to that because we have this kind of just what's the other analogy of them just stopping things because it's caused even a fraction of harm.
Yeah, and it's that fear and that methodology that rightly or wrongly led to lockdowns due to the pandemic across the world, right? And there's just an issue in the media, as I'm well aware, of a negativity bias, because that's kind of what makes news when uncommon things happen, and they predominantly seem to be negative, at least for stuff that's reported. Someone had a remarkable day. Someone had a remarkable day. Great. Neil had a really pleasant day. That's not going to make news, although it might.
I want to fucking hear about that.
It might in Australia if you bumped into a kangaroo at some point. But yeah,
I have no idea what you just said. But
no, I think in Australia they just have quirky news about animals, right? Just because I think there's more koalas and kangaroos and stuff just bobbing around, so just more likely to have strange things happen. And so yeah, I think the news there is a bit cheerful sometimes. Yeah. But I've got a friend who's got this idea of the death awareness re-enchantment method, and yeah, it's about accepting our mortality, really, as far as I understand it, and not pushing death away, but understanding that while it could come at any moment, it might be morbid to think that actually that sense can lead us to just a greater presence and a greater appreciation of the current moment. You know, us being right here having this conversation is a blessing. You know, the food that we might eat later and waking up in the morning, accepting death. I think that's at the root of a lot of the fear in our society, and we see it, you know, in hospitals that are like desperately trying to keep people alive. I'm not saying they shouldn't, but yeah, it's a lot to get one's head round.
I am saying they shouldn't.
Really?
I think there's certain situations
pumping them full of drugs. Like my friend's dad at the moment, they're keeping him alive, but he's not living, and you know, he's not going to recover significantly. He might stabilize to a point where he can, you know, go back out, but I don't think he's going to thrive, and it might give him, you know, a little bit longer, and everyone's just having a waiting game, and while he's in this sterile environment, and I don't necessarily think that's, you know, good for everyone's mental health.
For sure. Yeah, we've digressed, but I think these are the only things I want to talk about. Ultimately, it's like, how are we being intimate with the really simple but important things?
Yeah, my next book, Should Death Be Legalized? I mean, it is being legalized, you know, elsewhere. It's like Switzerland. People, you know, if you've got the financial possibility, you go to Switzerland and get the sleeping pill. Boom, die on your own terms. What's so awful about that?
I think that's quite beautiful.
Yeah.
Ultimately.
I mean, especially if you can take acid at the same time, like the Aldous Huxley and the gang.
This is also part of the conversation, right? Of there's been studies done with people who are, what's the word when you are,
like late stage cancer.
Yeah, it's inevitable that you're going to die, and they've given them psilocybin. Yeah,
and it's allowed them to come to terms with their impending death. And for their relatives that are hanging around, to be able to see their loved one at peace with passing over to the other side, I think, it's it'll be very difficult to really totally quantify how positive that is for the family and what a kind of domino effect that will have, because grief is such a big issue in our society. I have a family friend that was struggling for a long time from the death of her mother. Yeah, it really touches people. So I think it's long overdue, not with psychedelics necessarily, but just for a whole paradigm shift in our relationship with death and the way people are treated in hospitals and all of that. You know, why not have a kind of ritual with psychedelics while someone's on their deathbed? It's, you know, it sounds a lot more interesting than the current state of affairs.
Yeah, for sure. Could talk about death all day. It's just powerful because it's just related to how much you're living, really. When you contemplate death, it's like it's going to bring you closer to what you're living for. Yeah,
absolutely. I think that's what underpins this method I was just speaking about. And I suppose it's not how many breaths one takes, it's how many breaths take our breath away, and like how are you living? Like, are you alive? That's why I think this longevity stuff's kind of crazy. Like 80, 90 years is surely sufficient enough time to, you know, get everything done. We don't need more like boomers. Let someone else take the baton.
Yeah, but that's you judging someone else's experience, right?
I know.
Which is the same thing that's got us into this state in the first
dreadful.
place.
And the thing is like I can kind of relate in some sense, because I know some of these folks maybe had issues throughout their 30s, like health issues, or didn't fully come into their like really like joyous kind of abundance of today until like their mid 40s. So like you're looking at that and you're like, oh shit, I only just became like a happy rich dude I would kind of want this to go on for like some time.
Sure. Yeah, I feel like I'm just figuring things out. I'm just starting to start.
Yeah. And I'm not implacably opposed to some of these stem cell treatments.
No.
Even though they're mostly preclinical.
We have to
there's
agree
some
on
evidence
certain
behind,
things.
there's some evidence emerging, around it. I wouldn't necessarily say no. I'm not ruling it out. I just think for me,
blood transfusions.
Blood transfusion saved my mum.
Wow.
When she gave birth to me, she lost a lot of blood. Like, thank you so much for the people that donated the blood. I'm just saying that for me, the psychedelic experience brings me more at peace with the possibility of my death, and
the inevitable possibility.
and the death of people around me. So yeah, for me, obviously I don't have that much money. If I did, maybe I would want to kind of save humanity by allowing everyone to live forever. But for me, it just invites me to do more inner work and to responsibly share information about these experiences and sketch a world where, we're happier and more free. Yeah,
for sure. I think just lastly on this longevity piece, and if people can live forever, I mean, that is still confined to the ecosystem that we're a part of. And I just, great, okay, be around what you would deem forever, but it's just actually you're dependent on something bigger than you, so it's not going to work.
And ultimately, arguably, the world is already sort of overpopulated, and the only like ethical way for these treatments to come through is if there's widespread access to it. So if the population's already like quadrupled in the last like half century.
But
so
always
basically you're either going to have like tens of billions of people on this earth, or you're going to have an ever richer, ever more powerful class of people that are just presiding over the proles coming and going while they live forever. That sounds pretty like kind of this like weird techno feudal
Hunger
future Games. that we should all be resisting and working to imagine another future. So I'm a little bit like uneasy with this connection between the psychedelic space and the longevity space that's emerging, but as I say, who am I? If
who are you? What's the next book? Are you going to write one? Are you going to a sequel? What's the...
I mean, look, it's like, I'm really grateful to have had the opportunity, but it's 20,000 words. It's kind of like a coffee table book.
I thought I could see that in a coffee shop. There's a lot of them.
And it's cool, like it's sort of the mainstreaming of the topic, but it's not the kind of tour de force memoir or piece of journalism that I might have envisaged, but maybe I'm just not ready to write that right now. But it's incredible to have seen like what people have put out this year, like Mike J, Psychonauts, Andy Mitchell, 10 Trips, and then previously I was just reading Nico's Dope World, which is really, really amazing. So I guess I would like find my niche over time. Like one of my pieces just got made into a short documentary, which was really cool. And who knows? I don't know. I'm really interested in Soma, like this Indian sacrament, the identity of which has been lost over time. Some people have like postulated that it was maybe mushrooms or cannabis or concoction of different plants. I'm really interested in researching that. I think that's a real unsolved mystery.
Soma,
Soma. S-O-M-A. You've probably seen the word.
I've seen the documentary, Searching for Soma.
Yeah, exactly.
That was a Israeli refugee, I think.
The word is used kind of interchangeably with like paradise.
Sure. Maybe that's what it was. Yeah.
So I'm really interested in that.
Interesting. I think you're an interesting guy. I'm very grateful to have your number and just be your friend, because I think there's a lot that you're passionate about, and the way you speak to it is in integrity, as we've fleshed out, when people get a dose of that in the podcast. Yeah, it's great, man. And
thanks for having me on. No, it's been great to get to know you over the last 6-7 months or so. Like, thanks to Robin for introducing us. Like, amazing, and long long may our connection flourish, man.
Yeah.
Like, amazing what you're doing with the podcast as well. Like, yeah, I'm expecting great things. They're already underway.
They're already great. I'm excited for you to find your niche. You said find your niche. I feel like you already have, but
Yeah, it's dialing it down, I suppose.
Yeah.
Dialing it down, and it's all good, being a sort of jack of all trades, master of none. But yeah, I don't know. I reckon I've got it in my locker to really like zero in on something, and not just be a sort of talking head like I am right now, but make like a really significant sort of academic contribution to our common knowledge. But if I don't, who cares?
Like you're accountable.
I put it out there.
It's
I
gonna
put it out there. Like, I'm actually quite like an academic minded person, and that would be amazing to I don't know, discover something that would be pretty cool. But someone else has done the SOMA research that I'm looking into. So I see myself as someone who can just amplify interesting and worthy stuff for the time being. But perhaps one day I can be the person that creates it as well.
What do you think at the moment you're most curious about, like most passionate about? Like what gets you up every day?
What gets me up every day? Love. Yeah. Just there's this really warm feeling. It's difficult to articulate. Not necessarily in like towards someone,
but it's like a thread that you find in certain things.
Yeah, I'm just super, super grateful that I can get up and breathe. Partly thanks to the mouth taping, actually. Like that has transformed my sleep over the last few months.
Great.
Like I've stopped snoring. I feel way more like oxygenated when I wake up. Like before, sometimes like my ribs were kind of tight, like I was clearly mouth breathing,
blowing off too much carbon dioxide.
Yeah, during the night. So that's really good. And I don't know, like I want to get even closer to my family, like my mum, my brother, my aunt, my uncle, and everyone else. And there's so much I want to do. There's a lot of projects I'm working on and pitching for. I'm kind of broke, so there's like a financial incentive to just keep it moving as well. And just to experience.
It's interesting being broke, isn't it? Of there's so much fire in that energy and what's driving you forward. It's interesting. I'm going to play with that because it's such a motivation to keep going and keep striving and create, not losing integrity, but just keep moving in a direction.
But to be honest, even a few years ago when I had 4 or 5 grand in savings, then I was just focused on advancing my career, which I'm kind of still focused on now. And then I put all the money in crypto, and then obviously the market kind of turned down, and I actually made profit on that half of it still, but then the other half I lost the passwords.
Wow.
So
surely there's a way to get those passwords back.
You would think, but I can't find, because I had to change my laptops pretty suddenly, because I had to give back the laptop I was using to somebody, and I don't think I made a copy of certain passwords.
Has he got those passwords?
She. Women own laptops too, But I don't know. I think I'm just pretty driven. I don't know. But I feel like I only want to do good stuff. What motivates you? What gets you up in the morning?
I'm up every morning.
The
health. The barometer of health. I get up every morning because I'm connected to the mission. It's a constant refining of what I'm doing, and I'm seeing the direction that I can go in and the footsteps of others that inspire me, to really contribute to a more greater future. My heart knows is possible. I know what's possible. It feels possible to me to have deeper connections, to double down on my health to feel
Mhm.
even better. Motivated by my own like health journey, my own understanding of like the patterns of behaviors that keep me stuck, keep me locked in a headspace that's not good for me. So like understanding myself, that gets me up to like really be curious to find things out, and then be able to contribute by understanding and figure things out, and then delivering that in a way that helps others. It's like, it really is as simple as that. It's just being of service. What feels true to me and is so selfish, because it makes me feel fucking great. That's it, man. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, you're not going to be able to do that if you stay all slumped in your bed.
Yeah.
You got to get up. You don't have to.
Yeah.
I mean, I could sort of just stay in bed and sort of wallow in this feeling of love, but without, contributing and having a sort of interplay with other people, it might fade, and I'd become sort of very solitary and lonely over time.
It would fade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It comes from people. Yeah.
That is why I like redefining communities and contributing to like what's the role in the community. I've seen significant change of viewing things from that lens of how can I contribute to relationships, to friendships, to community. Before I was just looking to gain. I was looking to like, well, why haven't I got this friend or that friend, or they seem to be connected? Why haven't I got that? And I'm like looking for that rather than seeing what I can bring. And since I've come from that place, a lot's changed.
Yeah, I've been grappling with this idea quite a bit recently too, Yeah. Finding ways to come more into being of service and, being a bridge for people to come together and, offering and bringing something to the table more than a book, which is very egocentric, really. Just like motherfucker comes along and just plonks his book down on the table, like, I'm the spokesperson, listen to me. Yeah, like you're doing, like putting on ecstatic dance.
Yeah.
DJing. Far more likely to bring people to the yard regularly. Once you've read the book, but you can change your DJ set every time.
Yeah, but a book can travel around the world, and you've given birth to something that can change lives. What an ecstatic dance! I can put it online, and people can listen to it, but it's not the same. You have to
one cardboard box.
You've scaled it.
One cardboard box of ketamine at a time. Look at this, 10 doses. Anesthetic with dissociative and hallucinogenic effects. Warning, may cause damage to bladder. You heard it here first.
Beautiful, man. Let's wrap it up. Where can people find out more about your work and connect?
Okay, so it's in some Waterstones branches in the smart thinking section.
Great.
But yeah, I'm on Instagram at Mayfa Mundo. That's my name, and then the world, Mayfa Mundo, and also on Twitter.
The world, you mean the world?
El Mundo.
El Mundo.
Yeah, it's the world in Spanish.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay. Nice.
And I'm on Twitter at Mayfa Busby. I'm still tweeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not called Twitter anymore.
I'm still posting. I'm never going to say that. I'm always going to say tweeting. Like, come on.
Nailed it, didn't they, with the tweets?
Yeah, I mean, it is like you're tweeting. Like, it's tweet. You're literally like a little bird, right? Just like putting little snippets out there into the universe. Like posting just sounds awfully formal when it's really not like that. I mean, it's going a bit down the drain. Like yesterday, I just had the same tweet at the top of my feed like all day, even though I was fucking saying not interested. And it was just glitching out. But still, it's a good platform for dialogue and exchange of ideas, and that's where I get most of my news. I don't really look at news websites. I would just like see what people are sharing.
It requires a little bit more thinking than viewing content. A little bit more thinking.
Yeah, I want to be like an active participant in what I consume. So it's difficult actually sometimes because like occasionally some really like gnarly shit comes up on Twitter, even from people I follow. So then I'll just be like, okay, not interested. But yeah, maybe if you just check it once or twice a day, and if you want to be in that space of like kind of knowing what's going on, which I don't necessarily think is beneficial to everyone. Certainly for some people it is. Like for someone who wants to work in journalism, probably a good idea to have like at least some understanding of what's the latest news on certain topics. But yeah, we digress. Don't overuse social media, but follow me on Instagram and Twitter, and yeah, check out my shit. Thank you.
Beautiful, man. Thank you, brother.